Hey, welcome to the Emblazers show where we're talking to B2B leaders who are igniting revenue. I am super excited today to be chatting with Catherine Alexander. Not only is she a sales performance expert, she happens to be someone I have worked closely with over the years. I consider her a good mate. But over the years, man, Catherine, you have talked with global sales teams. You've got deep client connections. You have facilitated, keynoted, helping participants, attendees get out of their comfort zone and really help them with challenges that they're facing. Today, I want to pick that very smart English brain of yours and talk about discovery.
Sure.
Okay.
You
So
could have picked any topic in the world, Amanda, and you picked discovery.
I shook the magic 8 ball and it said,
Okay.
ask Catherine,
Discovery.
discovery in its best British accent. That's what my
I
magic
love
8 ball
that.
yes. Okay, well, here, listen, you've taught sellers and buyers, right, that
Mhm.
they are misaligned more than half the time on actual problems that need solving. And I'm very curious to understand what's happening in our brain here that is so difficult for that sales professional to like really listen,
Mhm.
understand their buyer's challenges,
Mhm.
rather than just jumping right into solutions.
Yeah. Um, Big question. I like how we started off with the easy stuff. Thanks for breaking me in gently,
Just
mate.
we're hitting a home run straight out the bat.
We're gonna park the piece around listening just for a minute because
Okay.
that's a far bigger conversation. And I just want us all to be kind in that space because listening is one of those skills that humans find incredibly easy to tell people that they do well and incredibly difficult to show people that they do well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's for many, many, many reasons. But in the context of sellers and the discovery conversations, or indeed any conversations they're having with their clients, with their buyers, I think what is going on is not only a reflection of their own psychology, but also a reflection of the context within which sellers are operating. If we just pause for a moment and think about their job title in and of itself, seller. What do you sell? You sell a solution. So it is totally understandable, and I've fallen into this trap myself, that sellers are listening for a particular off ramp, trigger, word, moment that they can move into talking about their solution. It's comfortable, it's what they're targeted on, it's what their leaders are asking them about, it's what they have to move through pipe. It's totally understandable. So, what the research that shows, it came from Florida State University, the wonderful Dr. Lev Bonney, who I hope you've also got to chat with at some point.
We have, yes.
Hello, Lev. He and his team were looking at what needs to change, which is all around how you beautifully described my career. It's all about helping people understand what they're doing is not wrong or bad. It's just human, but a couple of moments of changing their behavior and their choices can really make an impact on the outcome. So, Left's research really showed to me, as an ex seller and an ex sales leader, something that I experienced, but I didn't previously have the data to back up. That I was listening. I definitely was listening, mate, but I was listening for a certain word or an outcome so I could take it to a place. And I think we've all done that in conversations, like you're nodding your head, like with loved ones or friends, people at parties. You're listening so that you can share your experience or your anecdote. It's totally understandable. There's loads of science into listening. But what Left's research really shows is that whilst that is understandable, it is also limiting outcomes. So the real challenge and the change, super, super easy to say, challenging to do,
Mhm.
is that when you're sat in the moments of discovery, and I'm saying moments purposefully because I think we can all appreciate that discovery is more than a single conversation. But when you're in that, what you really need to do is sit in a moment of professional curiosity, which is also why I personally don't like calling it sales discovery. I think anybody who talks with a client, anybody who talks with another human being is looking to discover something. And when you stop being attached to the thing that you're listening for and discovering, and you just actually take a step back and start just to listen and be curious about what they are truly saying to you, that's the step change. And it's that that actually has the impact. Because when you're truly listening to the problem, you are understanding it, you're probably gently challenging it. And a better understanding of the problem is going to allow you to sell a better solution. So I understand why we're rushing to sell, but I'm asking everybody to pump the brakes.
I have so many follow-up questions to that.
Thank goodness. Otherwise, this would be a very quick podcast, mate.
Well, it's interesting because as I'm sitting here and I'm listening to you, and I'm thinking at the same token, like times that I've had conversations with clients and they're sharing their problems, and I'm so quick to say, okay, well, we could do this, we could do this, we can help you solve with this. But to your point, I love this word you say, professional curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
So the next obvious question, if you're listening to this, is, all right, Catherine, we hear you, we see you. Now fix me. How do you
I've never been asked that before.
No? Okay, well, listen, it's the first time for everything, right?
I love it.
Fix me, Catherine. How do you help then the sales team or the commercial org if you're saying that everyone really needs to have this skill? How do you unlearn this interrogation style habit? Like, tell me more, because we're not using the traditional 20 questions approach here, right?
No.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. Number one, stop thinking about numbers of questions that we have to ask. So if you do have numbers of questions, stop it, please. That is limiting for you and also limiting for your conversations. I think the big piece for me is to understand the output, because how you get to the output can then be a little bit more flexible. Because discovery for me is also not a single player game. I sold alongside sales engineers, SDRs, BDRs, like different people touched the client during the conversations in different ways. And I mean touched metaphorically. Consent is everything, people. So just as an aside. So Amanda, you want to jump in?
I'm not even going to keep, I'm not even going to respond to that.
We're on the same page there, mate. So for me, and also what plays out in the research, is it's less about holding myself and as a leader holding my team to a fixed set or number or order of questions. It is allowing my team and indeed my entire commercial engine to understand what's the aim of discovery. And then trusting them and giving them the skills to get there in their own way that's authentic, given your industry, your product, and the problems that you are helping your client solve. So to go back to that, there are really two key things that you need out of a discovery conversation with a customer. One of which is super useful to you and the customer, and that is a problem statement. So a problem statement, concise statement of what is it that is limiting or damaging or holding back your company, be it big or small. What is it that we're helping you solve? And it needs to be shared with the customer and it needs to be agreed. And then the second part is selfishly for the sellers, but it's an understanding of the psychology of the buyer, because at Corporate Visions we're obsessed with the psychology of the buyer, quite rightfully so. And it's all about understanding how the buyer sees their problem. Because how I see the problem as maybe an end user of a product, and the person that is impacted day by day by, I don't know, slow upload or difficult processes or difficulty finding information. Like that's how I see the problem. Lots and lots of tiny hurdles, but boy, are they irritating. Whereas my boss is going to see that same problem in a very different way because multiple people report into them. So it's really important for you to understand how your buyer views their problem. They're never going to tell you that overtly, but you can figure it out. And why it's important is because when you know how they view their problem, you can help them in the most efficient, helpful, kind way. Basically, where are you at, Miss Customer? Let me meet you where you're at in terms of meeting your needs, answering the questions that you're not asking, so on and so forth. So, those are the two things. Stop being fixed on what they are doing within discovery, what you are doing within discovery, and really focus on those two outcomes: problem statement and an understanding of how your customer views that problem. Those are the changes.
Okay, Catherine, I'm intrigued. Tell me more. Problem statement.
The old problem statement.
How do we get a buyer and a seller to agree on the problem statement? What does this look like?
Very long answer, but I'll try my best
Okay.
to keep it short. So a problem statement is really the output of a series of discovery conversations. So again, I'm going to talk about it, and I apologize if it sounds like you should do this in a single conversation or just with you. I appreciate that's not everybody's reality, but at some point before you move into selling, you should agree on a problem statement with your buyer. So for some Emblazers, that could happen in a single call just because of the nature of your sales cycle. For others, it will be multiple calls. So with that grayness overlaid, let me deep dive into it. So sorry, everybody who's just listening to the podcast, but this is a big plug to come on over and watch the video and see mine and Amanda's happy, smiley faces, because I'm going to share screen.
Thank you for that plug. And it's in the show notes too. So we'll link it out to the show notes as well.
Crikey. I am going to share my screen. Bear with me. Because there are three parts to a problem statement. And when I think about a problem statement, it is all around, I'm just going to build to it. Actually, I'm not going to build to it. This is the full builds. There are three aspects to a problem statement. And really all that means is that to truly get to the point where you go, yep, we fully understood this problem, you have to have looked at it from three different angles: the context of the problem, how that problem quantifies out across the business. There's always quantification. So how bad is it? What are the costs of it? How is it showing up? And also in terms of solutions, the scope. Okay, so what is in scope, and how are you justifying all of those solutions? So the whole discovery process, again, my big pitch to everybody: are there questions? Oh, no, not are there. Of course there are. There are endless numbers of questions in the world that people could ask in order to get to the output. And personally, as an ex-sales leader, I'm very unattached to dictating the how. I found that I got much better results when my team were really clear on the what and the why. And therefore, I share this. If you want to screenshot it, that's great. We can also ensure that you get it. But the big point of a problem statement is that it outlines and is agreed by the customer. This is the context. This is how we quantify that problem. And this is the scope and the justification of the solution. Because we all know they're not going to spend $1 million on a problem that only costs $1,000 to solve.
Right.
So on your screen right now, you can see that there are two columns: ask and inspect. Because what the research showed are some common missteps and some common pitfalls that people fall foul of when they're doing discovery. And the quickest and easiest one is being too shallow or too general in their discovery questions. And what that usually looks like is that they are lingering in questions that we would put in the left-hand column, which is on a black background, and we title ask. Do you have to ask these questions? Yes. Are they table stakes? Yes. You're asking questions: what, who, when, where, like all around the context of the problem and how it shows up in their business. Of course, you have to ask those, but how you differentiate yourself in this space, which is really important, is by ensuring that you're also going to the right-hand column, which we call inspect and the research calls inspect. I'm going to call it maybe like challenge, or that sense of like, really? So it's gentle. Yeah, that falls in with like my authentic self, because you just laughed with me at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's that sense of sense checking. Like, you're saying this, but are you sure? And when I look at problem symptom alignment, like my partner's an ex-PT, and I'm like, oh, my ankle hurts. And he's like, are you sure it's your ankle? Are you sure it's not your knee, but it's just presenting in your ankle? So on and so forth. So it's that sense of, are what you're telling me is the problem actually align with the symptoms? So it is sense checking. And silent killers, not my favorite words. They're the unspoken things. So what is it that you know is happening in this person's industry or in other companies just like theirs? And you've kind of got that weird itch or spidey sense in your brain that you're like, they're not talking with me about it. That feels weird. That's on you to raise that and ask those questions. So this is all to say that common mistakes, understandable. Being too shallow, just lingering in the left-hand side, that's common mistake number one. Common mistake number two, taking all of their answers at face value, aka not doing the really check on the right-hand side, and just getting a little bit deeper. And then the skill to this, and why I don't want to dictate this to my team, is it's a dance. It's a dance back and forwards. You can't ask all of the questions down the left-hand side and then wait for the second call or the third call to ask all the third questions. That's weird
Yeah.
and shows you're not listening. Because one of these questions over here is going to naturally lead you over to the right-hand side to like sense check and go deeper. So it really is a dance. And the through line is listening, which goes back to what we were saying before, Amanda. Like, we all listen for cues, exit ramps to say or share certain things. And the real change is, instead of listening for the opportunity to share things, you're listening for an opportunity to ask further and deeper questions. That's the real big mental shift that I'm challenging everybody to make.
This is really fascinating, and I'm as you talking through this, and there's a lot on a seller that has to think through when they're having this kind of conversation. How
Sorry.
well, I think about from a leader perspective, how
Mhm.
do they support sellers in this change, this habit change?
Yeah. Really good question, and I love how everybody at Emblazers has always got such a keen eye on how they can support their team. It's one of my favorite things about this community. I absolutely adore it. So there is no one silver bullet answer that you can give everybody. There are a couple of steps that will make this easier for your team. So number one, I think we all have to accept that there are probably a limited number of questions that could be asked. You can verbalize them in different ways, but in terms of the direction of travel, there's a limited number of questions. So, my biggest advice for leaders in this conversation and most conversations is to really lower the cognitive load of your team. And what I mean by that is give them a baseline of really solid questions, because what you don't want them to do is have to think of the questions on the spot. That means they're not really listening in the right way because their brain is doing multitasking. So that sense of, and I know it sounds really simple, but I also know that I was guilty of not doing it with my team. Absolutely repetitive practice of questions that are simple, easy to respond to, and that we know and we have practiced where to go and follow up, because that's the key. You want to help them stop listening to answer, and they're listening to ask another question. So it's that sense of running through those, I hate to say it, role plays, listening to their calls, supporting, but having a baseline of questions that they just know that they can go to is super smart and it will enable them to listen far better. And that's the real key to this. So questions, practice, listen to their calls, and then just some gentle coaching around what makes a good question. It should be opened. Closed questions have a place, but it's a limited place.
Yeah.
And please stop nesting your questions. Amanda does it beautifully. She does not nest her questions. It's why she's such a good podcast host. She asks one question and allows the person to answer. I definitely fell foul when I listened back to my own sales calls and my team's phone calls of asking more than one question. And it's really difficult for your customer to answer. So simple, lots of practice, a library of questions, and then help them practice listening to ask, not listening to tell.
Catherine, that was such a great overview and a deep dive on discovery. Thank you for joining this episode of the Emblazers. It's always good to see you, mate.
Lovely to see you. Thank you very much for having me. Have a great rest of your day.